Rules, rules, rules. Love them or hate them, we have plenty in triathlon, but they are there to make racing a safe and fair environment.
Yeah, even so, some may not seem quite so obvious, and as a result, you might end up breaking them and run the risk of getting a penalty or worse, a disqualification.
Well, watch this video and you will be halfway through gliding through your next triathlon.
Right, before we jump on into this, make sure you give this video a like, and if you're not doing so already, make sure you give us a subscribe so you catch more of our videos.
Yeah, and one more mini question for you guys. Have you ever broken a triathlon race rule? Maybe unknowingly. Have you been penalised? Well, do let us know. Make sure you share so that the rest of us can learn from your mistakes the easy way. Completing a triathlon is something to be proud of, and partly because it is a solo effort. It's just you and your body battling through that swim, bike and run. And there's no denying that the energy you get from the vocal support of people on the sidelines can give you a real boost. But I'm afraid that is where the assistance has to end. You cannot accept a drink or food or even give anything to any of the spectators. You must carry what you have on you. And if you do have any really enthusiastic supporters who've come along for the day, you just need to remind them that they might think cycling alongside you is going to be great for moral support, but that could actually risk you getting disqualified. So it has to just be you, your own effort and your own fuel that you're carrying or taking from fuel stations. Well, the rules around helmets are more well known, but the first one to check is the safety standard. It's to basically look after you, but certain organisations in different countries will have different rules. So you might need to just check the standard of your helmet before you head to your event. And this will normally be pointed out when you go to rack your bike and you have to have your helmet looked at then. But 99% of helmet rules are broken in transition. Now, you do need to have your helmet on and your chin strap done up before you unrack your bike and you take it out of T1. And then on the flip side, when you come into T2, your bike must be securely racked again before you can undo that helmet. And the best thing to think about is basically just do helmet first and helmet last, and you should be safe.
Do you know your 10 metres from your 12 metres from your 20 metres? Okay, you can be forgiven for maybe not knowing that. However, do yourself a favour, at least know the race rules and what those distances might look like in real life. Now, most triathlon races are non-drafting, which means that you need to be a certain distance behind the front wheel of the rider in front, and you have a set period of time to pass that rider. Failing to do so, and you will be penalised. Now, you'll be penalised by race marshals, and yes, they will be out on course monitoring what you're doing. And a word of warning here, because the race marshals are also guesstimating those distances to a degree, so I'd advise err on the side of caution and avoid that penalty altogether.
Blocking. Now, I'm not talking about removing your friends on social media, but making sure that there's enough room for people to overtake you. So if you are riding abroad, check you know which side of the road to ride on, and always keep to the curb side, so the space on the other side. And it's also worth double checking on the rules around the white lines. Sometimes you're allowed to cross over them, other times not. It might be a dual road, so cars and traffic coming the other way, or you could end up with the whole thing closed and you are allowed to go over it when you overtake.
Right, you might think you're doing your friend a favour by passing your race number on in an event that you can no longer do. I mean, at the end of the day, injuries happen and things come up in your calendar that means that you can no longer do some events. So you might be inclined to think outside the box in terms of recouping your costs for that event. And if you've missed that refund date, then you might think to pass that number on to a friend so they can then do that event. However, not all events will allow this due to safety reasons. You may be in a different category and so on and so forth. In fact, some event companies are rather unsympathetic if they have to deal with this. In fact, they've also been known in some cases to issue bans from racing from 3 months to 4 years. And Ironman have even been known to do a lifetime ban at some point.
Heading somewhere warm to race? Well, you need to check those water temperature rules. Depending on the brand of race that you're racing, the wetsuit cutoff can be anywhere from 22 to 25 degrees Celsius. And sometimes that call is only made on race morning, so you need to be prepared. If it is a non-wetsuit swim and you just have your tri-suit, you'll be fine. But you need to remember that there are rules even for that. you cannot use any neoprene shorts, and also no clothing is allowed to extend below your elbows or your knees. So if you're someone who likes to wear compression socks when you're riding on the bike, you're gonna have to squeeze those on over wet legs in T1, and that's something to factor in. Also remember that in all swim legs, certain things are not allowed, such as swim aids, pool buoys, fins, and of course, virtual augmented reality goggles to help you with your pace. None of that is allowed. Swim stroke. There are no rules on what stroke you're allowed to do to cover the swim leg, and for most people, just surviving the swim portion is the goal. But there are some rules as far as forward progression goes. You may even stop and float on your back if you need to. You may even hold on to a lifeguard's mally or their boat or their board if you need to, as long as you make no forward progress during that section. There are some rules around backstroke in some races. Some races won't allow it, for the primary reason that if you're on your back and throwing your arms up in the air, it can look like you're in trouble and they might need to come and rescue you. If you are planning to do backstroke at any point in your swim, it's worthwhile letting the race organizer know beforehand that you plan to do backstroke so that they don't think you're in trouble.
Now, if you're heading to a party, you're likely going to read the dress code, and the same kind of applies for triathlon. In most cases, the rules state that you cannot bare your torso, and the rules kind of vary from event to event on this, but typically they describe it as not unzipping your tri-suit below the bottom of your sternum. And for women, if you're wearing a sports bra, you can probably get away with unzipping it further. That seems to be allowed and okay. You may notice in some hot races, pros unzip their tri-suit further and then make sure they zip them up for the finish line. Make sure you check ahead of racing on that rule. And if you're unsure, just ask in the race briefing, because at the end of the day, you'd hate to finish an Ironman and then be issued a penalty or a DQ for something so silly and so minor. And obviously, it goes without saying, nudity normally isn't allowed in events. So if you do suspect you're going to need a toilet break, then check where the loos are on course beforehand.
Now, this is a pretty good rule to live your everyday life by, and when it comes to racing, there is no difference. Carry your rubbish with you. Whether you finish with something you want to discard it, you're going to have to carry it until you get to a rubbish drop zone. And even then, you need to make sure that your rubbish goes in that zone, because when it comes to racing, the penalties for dropping litter on course are pretty harsh, and rightly so. And this isn't just referring to empty gel packets or drinks. Even bits of kit, say there's something you're using and it's got rather annoying or it's broken and you just want to discard of it, that still counts as littering. So whatever you start the race with, unless you leave it in a litter zone, it has to finish with you.
Your transition area is likely to be small with fellow competitors on either side, so respect their space and keep your kit within the boundaries of your bike racking zone. Some races will mark this out and penalise you for infringing on others' space. Note, sometimes you're allowed a box or a towel to mark your spot and keep your kit tidy, but it will depend on the race that you're doing. Ironman, for example, usually supply transition bags that you must use.
There was a rather well-publicised show of camaraderie and sportsmanship at an Olympic qualifying race in Tokyo, which ended up in 2 athletes being disqualified. Now, this was quite an extreme case, but all they did was run across the line holding hands rather than racing for the tape. Now, most age group races are not going to have rules that strict, but it is worth bearing in mind, and as a result, waiting to have your hugs and your high fives, etc., until you've got across that finish line. And some smaller events will even allow you to cross the line with friends and family, but it's worth checking the rules because sadly that is not the case for every race.
Well, without meaning to sound like a stuck record, make sure you read the race pack. And if you've still got any questions, just ask them at the race briefing, as I've already mentioned.
Yeah, well, hopefully you get through your next race without any issues, nice and smoothly. But if you didn't watch this in time and you have made some mistakes, let us know.
Yep, and if you've enjoyed today's video, as I said already, give it a like.